Welcome to the One-Year Book of Mormon. A non-Mormon reads through the Book of Mormon. 2 Nephi, chapter 27. Chapter Overview. This is heavily borrowed from Isaiah 29, but unfortunately the verse numbers do not correspond well, if at all, and there are significant additions. As a fun fact, though, the RLDS publishes this chapter as Isaiah 29 in their Bibles. Verse 1 speaks of in the last days, which is here defined as in the days of the Gentiles, and says that pretty much everybody will be drunken with iniquity and all manner of abominations, which calls to mind similar statements in Revelation 17 and 18, which speaks of Mystery Babylon, the great whore being drunk with fornication and with the blood of the saints. Verse 2 says, "And when that day shall come, they shall be visited of the Lord of hosts, with thunder and with earthquake and with a great noise and with storm and with tempest and with the flame of devouring fire." And this is quite similar to Isaiah 29:6, which says, "Thou shalt be visited," etc. Of course, the original was a warning to Israel about a coming destruction, but the Book of Mormon makes it about some other people in the far distant future. Similarly, verse 3 is nearly identical to Isaiah 29, verses 7 and 8. The biggest change here is from Ariel in Isaiah to Zion in the Book of Mormon, but this is actually not as big a change as it sounds, because verse 1 of Isaiah identifies Ariel as the city where David lived, which is elsewhere in the Bible identified as Jerusalem or called Zion. Then verse 4 is quite similar to Isaiah 29:9, but adds to the start of the verse, "For behold, all ye that doeth iniquity." Then both versions continue, "Stay yourselves and wonder," with Isaiah going on to say, "Cry ye out and cry. They are drunken, but not with wine. They stagger, but not with strong drink." While the Book of Mormon says, "For ye shall cry out and cry, yea, ye shall be drunken, but not with wine. Ye shall stagger, but not with strong drink." Again, it's very similar, but there are different pronouns, and I think the difference in pronouns in Isaiah is significant. Verse 5 starts off basically the same, but then where Isaiah 29:10 says that God has closed your eyes, the Book of Mormon says, "Ye have closed your eyes." Then where Isaiah says that God has covered the prophets and your rulers, the seers, the Book of Mormon changes it to, "And ye have rejected the prophets and your rulers, and the seers hath he covered because of your iniquity." While I can agree that Isaiah was likely saying that God had done these things because of the iniquity of the Israelites, and it is true that the Israelites largely rejected their prophets, these changes do make the emphasis of the passage and the context somewhat different. 2 Nephi 27 verses 6 through 24 do not parallel Isaiah, though it does have themes from this chapter. Instead, it is a, quote, prediction of the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. Instead, Joseph Smith takes the section in Isaiah about the sealed book in verses 11 and 12 and makes it quite different and applies it to his day and to the Book of Mormon. But we will look at those as we get to them. Eventually, the Book of Mormon does get back to play during this chapter of Isaiah with 2 Nephi 27:25 and Isaiah 29:13. This section, though, is quite different from Isaiah 29:11 and 12, even though it borrows heavily from it, in that it speaks of a sealed book, a learned man, and an unlearned man. What is happening in Isaiah is that God is chastising the Israelites for being recalcitrant and refusing to listen to his prophets whom he has sent. He uses the analogy of someone giving a sealed book to a man who is able to read it. That is, he could read it if he broke the seal, and there's no reason for him not to break the seal, but he refuses to read it because he won't break the seal. But then this same book is given to an illiterate man who opens the seal, but then that does him no good because he can't read it. It's sort of a catch-22 situation here in Isaiah. As it's presented in 2 Nephi 27, however, it ends up almost unrecognizable, except for the theme of the sealed book, learned man, and unlearned man. This sealed book seems to be speaking of the Book of Mormon. Verse 9 speaks of a man getting the book and delivering the words of the book unto another, which is what Joseph Smith did in his speaking the Book of Mormon orally to a scribe who wrote it down. But it becomes confusing because at first it seems like the entire Book of Mormon must be sealed, and then Joseph Smith would translate it and make it known. But there must apparently be a secondary sealed portion, which is yet sealed, because verse 10 says, "But the words which are sealed he shall not deliver," even though the previous verse said that the man would deliver the words of the book. Perhaps Joseph Smith intended on producing another work like the Book of Mormon, but never got around to it because we have nothing in Mormon history that indicates that this sealed portion was ever translated. This section continues as if the entirety of the sealed portion should be considered the Book of Mormon, because verse 12 speaks of the 3 witnesses who will be the only ones besides Joseph Smith who would see the book, except then verses 13 and 14 say that God may choose others as well to see the book, and that God will bring forth the words of the book without differentiating among the parts of the book, and identifying some section as yet sealed. And verse 22 repeats this latter part. I think that Mormons have some sense of excitement about the sealed book and think that more revelation is coming from that, but it's now been 200 years and no more has been forthcoming. While I'm sure that Mormons have a way to explain this, it's just confusing to me, and honestly I think it's an example of sloppiness on the part of Joseph Smith, because he borrowed so heavily from Isaiah 29 both before and after the section, and needed to work in something about a sealed book. But he also needed to be able to translate it from it, so he had to force some portion to be unsealed, and then ended up just making a mess of it all. Verses 15 through 22 are a passage in which Joseph Smith accurately predicts his own actions. Shocking, isn't it? Isn't it shocking that he was able to do that with such accuracy and clarity? It claims that God will tell Joseph Smith, that is, the one to whom the book is delivered, to translate words which are not sealed and deliver them to another, that is, to a scribe, and then will instruct that scribe to take them to a scholar to read, and says that the scholar will ask to see the book. Of course, that's only logical, and that if he's given the book, he will attempt to read it. This is less of a prediction than sports writer predicting who will win a particular game. It's just simple logic. If you're told that there's a book that exists, you need to have the book if you're going to read it. The passage continues by saying that the scribe will tell the scholar that he can't bring the book, for it is sealed. Though why a book being sealed would prevent its transport from one place to another is beyond me. Since the scholar will have no book in his possession to translate, the scholar, of course, will say he can't translate the book. Again, this is only logical. But somehow this is supposed to be some ooh, wow prediction from the Book of Mormon. And then the book will go to Joseph Smith, that is, the man who is not learned, who shockingly will be able to translate it. 2 Nephi 27 verse 23 again affirms that Jesus is God, not only because Elohim is never mentioned throughout the Book of Mormon, but also because it says, I am God and I am the same yesterday, today, and forever, which of course comes from Hebrews 13:8, Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forever. Verse 25 again picks up with Isaiah 29 at verse 13, and there are no major changes in this verse or the next verse. Then in 2 Nephi 27:27, it combines Isaiah 29 verses 15 and 16 and adds a good bit to the latter verse. First, woe is pronounced upon people who try to hide their actions from God and think that he can't see in the dark and hasn't seen their actions, with who seeth us and who knoweth us, being put in the mouths of these wicked people. In Isaiah it continues, surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay, with the speaker apparently reverting back to God, and the you who turn things upside down being the wicked people. In 2 Nephi 27, however, this speech is put into the mouths of the wicked people, and they also say. And in some ways it sounds like they must be chastising God or perhaps Isaiah, and as such it makes no sense. Since this is said to be from the wicked people, but what comes after is obviously a chastisement of the wicked people and a prophecy of the future, the Book of Mormon must add a change of speaker, so it inserts the phrase, but behold, I will show unto them, saith the Lord of hosts, that I know all their works. And then it continues identically with Isaiah by asking rhetorically if the thing formed, will say that God, as the potter, didn't make him. Oddly, this is exactly what Mormonism has done, accepting the later teaching of Joseph Smith that man is eternal, with only the physical body being created, but with a soul that was never created and can never be destroyed. Verse 28 in 2 Nephi 27 is the same as verse 17 in Isaiah 29. It is different at the beginning, but primarily in enforcing that it is God who is speaking, and it also changes the question into a statement. In verse 29 / Isaiah verse 18, Isaiah chapter 29 verse 18, is the same, but the next verse is slightly different, changing from the meek also shall increase their joy in the Lord to, and the meek also shall increase, and their joy shall be in the Lord. Similarly, verses 31 and 32, or Isaiah 29 verses 20 and 21, have some differences, but overall the thrust of the passage is the same. The remaining verses of the chapter are identical to the remaining verses of Isaiah 29.